Now, a newly surfaced record from the files alleges President Trump told a former police chief in a phone call 20 years ago that, quote, everyone knew about Epstein, end quote. The White House has not confirmed whether or not that call took place.
Look, it was a phone call that may or may not have happened in 2006. What I'm telling you is that what President Trump has always said is that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club because Jeffrey Epstein was a creep, and that remains true. And this call, if it did happen, corroborates exactly what President Trump has said from the beginning.
And on Capitol Hill yesterday, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick acknowledged that he met with Jeffrey Epstein on his island after Epstein was convicted for soliciting prostitution from a child in 2008.
We had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together.
CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand joins us from the White House with more on this. Good morning, Natalie. Tell us more about how the White House is grappling with these new Epstein developments and what lawmakers are saying.
Good morning, Errol. The White House continues to say that the release of the 3 million DOJ files shows transparency, but lawmakers and survivors of Epstein are just slamming the DOJ for the redactions and the files that they say are still being withheld. Lawmakers estimate the number to be around 2.5 million. And in a new letter from a group of survivors to the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, they say that the way the files have been released remain incomplete in a way that is both staggering and indefensible. They also call the redactions and disclosures in the release, quote, reckless and dangerous, saying some survivors' names and identifying information have been exposed, while other individuals' names were redacted, from businessmen to law enforcement officials. Some lawmakers have called this simply baffling. Take a listen.
There's a lot of redactions that were not necessary, that are redacting people who are not victims in any way. There's also a lot of redactions of investigators themselves and FBI and DOJ personnel. I'm not quite sure why they felt they needed to do that. Certainly, the redactions in this case were sloppy. They were not handled well. But I think it's more than that. I think this administration is stonewalling us and does not want people to find the whole truth.
As for what we have learned from some of these newly released files, one document first reported by the Miami Herald details an FBI interview of the former Palm Beach police chief, who said that he received a phone call from Trump back in 2006, in which he said, Trump said, apparently, thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this. Now, according to the police chief, Trump also described Ghislaine Maxwell as Epstein's operative and said she is, quote, evil. This is notable because President Trump has repeatedly tried to downplay what he knew about Epstein's activities years ago. As for Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, the White House, the press secretary says that the administration stands behind him, even as a number of lawmakers have called for him to resign or be fired because they feel misled by how he represented his ties to Epstein. Note, though, he has not been accused of any wrongdoing.
Very interesting details there. Natalie Brand at the White House with all the latest. Thank you, Natalie.